Okay, this is an extension of how to make the skirt, but we're going to turn it into a dress. You already have your waistband on here. What is it to add a bodice? Okay, which is what the top of a dress is called. Alright, so we have some calculations we need to do. Alright, what you'll want to do is take half your loom, and you'll want, because what this is the front half. And what I'm doing is I'm doing a square neckline. Okay, so I'm choosing to do a square neckline. Alright, so what I want to do is take my number, which should be 56, and divide it by 4. And that gives me 14. Okay, so what I'm choosing to do is take and do 14 on the ends, okay, for my red. But now here's where it's kind of up to you. I want to do a shoulder strap. Right here, you see? So I want to do a shoulder strap. So what I'm doing is I'm going to set aside 4 stitches on either side of the shoulder strap. It should be under the arm, okay, and then do 14, but I'm going to add an extra stitch to make it even, so it's going to be 11 stitches, because I'm going to do a cabling in here, a 3-stitch braid cable in here, a very delicate cable. Now it's up to you what you'd want your shoulder strap area to look like. You can do whatever you want here, just make sure that the end stitches, like the last 2 to 3, have either a seed stitch, garter stitch. Okay, so it needs to be seed or garter, because if you don't, it's going to curl. Alright, and I've calculated in, I believe, 4 stitches for a garter stitch on the end, so that I have a nice separation, a single purl separation, and then I'm going to have a 3-strand braid that I'm doing with my cabling here. Okay, so it's up to you. This is how I do it. I kind of even up whatever that number is, alright, but it's up to you how wide of a strap you want and how much area you want. And then once you get to where you're binding off and you're starting to do the top half flat with the up through here, if you continue that, knit the end, slip the first stitch, you can add sleeves if you want later on. Okay, but I don't need to add sleeves to this dress. I'll probably end up showing how to add sleeves to a dress another time. Okay, so that's kind of how you go in and you do that. And then you have your chest area here, which I have marked. Alright, so I have my 4 count over, and I put a stitch marker. Then the next stitch is my next 11 stitches that I'm marking, and I did 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I put stitch markers on in between the actual 3 that I'll be cabling, and then another 4, which means I'll be garter stitching 3 stitches on the ends of the 10 section, meaning the 11 section, 11 peg section. Okay, then I'm just going to straight knit all the way over in a different color. You can do it in the same color if you'd like. I'm going to be doing it in black. Okay, and then I'm going to switch back over to red, and then I'm going to do this over here. But because I have my front and back connected, what's going to happen is I'm going to start off with red, and I'm going to kind of work my way over and do my black and work it over. And then what I have to consider is that I've got to go all the way back around, but I'm trying not to cut this black. Now you can cut it. It means more weaving. Usually I just try to work it in, okay, as I'm working it. So I'm fixing to tell you how this gets started, but you can do this a little differently. You can cut this, attach the red, work your way over, attach the black, work your black over. But you're still going to have to come back around, because this is more like a half and half, but it's not exactly. You're chunking, your color chunking as I call it. So you have a chunk of color here and then the whole rest. And you don't have to do the cut and attach, cut and attach. You can do what I call a twist, but you're working flat. You're not working circularly like you might would. Now if you're going to work this in all one color, you don't have to do this. You don't have to do what I'm going to show you. You can just work in the round. Okay? But what I'm going to be showing you, you're going to be working flat. Alright? Now, To calculate a dress, after you've calculated half, this is still in girl sizings, okay? It may be a little different if you're doing a woman's top. You're going to need to calculate in your bust area, which is a lot larger. And in general, if you're going to calculate in your bust area, this is going to not be a dress top for you. Eventually I want to show how you can add in a bust area without having to add in a whole lot of pegs. So basically, if you've done a sock heel, you'll be able to do a bust area of a dress in the future, because it's a matter of increasing out while keeping the sides the same, and that's basically doing a sock. I'm going to show how you do that in a future video. Okay, but this is for little girls. No boobs involved, okay? Alright, so what we're going to do is, what you want to do is you want to divide it in half, and then you want to divide your half of your stitches by 4 to get a calculation, okay? And then you need to kind of gauge how much you want on your side to compare to your strap. It's going to be through here. Okay, then you have a chest area. Now you need to decide how much area, where you want to stop under the arm, so that you can bind off the sides and bind off the front. Alright, and that way you'll have just your straps and your back to do. Okay, and for me, I ended up with 54 rows because I had 6 inches of the chest area and the pit area. Now if you want the chest a little higher, you'll have to calculate that in. But I'm going to stick with 54 rows, and that's just going back and forth and keeping up with the stitch patterning, okay? After that, what you'll do is you'll bind off, if you have 4 here, you'll bind off 4 back here, okay? And so when you go in, you'll bind it off 4, come around here. You'll bind off 8. Come around here, bind off 8. Then you can continue doing the front as you were doing. This is just a general guide. I'm going to be showing you how to do this. But once you hit that 54 mark is when you're going to start switching up, and then you're going to start working your sections. You have your shoulder straps you're going to do here, and then you're going to have your back section that you're going to be doing. Now keep in mind, we're not going to do 54 rows and then switch up, because we're doing a stockinette through here. We have to allot so many of those last rows to do either a seed stitch, which is what I'm going to do, a rib stitch, or a garter stitch, okay, because you don't want it to curl. I'm going to do a seed stitch. Alright, so when I get to like the last 4 or 5 rows, I'm going to start a seed stitch in the chest area here up at the top. Alright, continuing my shoulder strap pattern, because I'm already planning on it ending and it turning into a strap, you know, just a strap dress rather than sleeves. Okay, so let's get started on this so that you have an idea on how to do it. But there's some basic math involved. You just need to know how high under the pit to the waist you want, and you need to times that by the number of rows, and that'll give you how many rows. Now what you'll need to do is find the measurement between the top of the shoulder and where your pit was that you decided to calculate from, and you multiply that by your number of rows per inch. Okay, so this is all based off of rows per inch. Okay, and that'll give you how many rows you need to do there. Alright, and the back, I generally just make a flat panel. I find it's just easier that way, just to make a flat panel. Okay, so let's get started. I have already put my stitch markers in for where I want my straps. So I counted in 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Put a stitch marker. That's always going to be a stockinette stitch around. Okay. Then I counted out 11 so that I'd have an even number of stitches on both sides of my 3-stitch cabling that I'm going to be doing. And then what I did was mark the very next peg. So the stitch markers here are actually where I start the front panel, which will be in black. Okay. And then I calculated over here. So 4 stitches between this stitch marker and this stitch marker, and then I have, as you can see, 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and I have a stitch marker on the beginning and end of my cable area here. Okay, and then 4 stitches, and then a stitch marker on the beginning part of my chest area. Okay, so what we need to do is attach our red. In which I like to just do a half knot and pull it to the base. We're looking at 14 stitches, and we should be able to kind of work in this black over the 14 stitches. Okay, so what you want to do is lay it over and knit. Alright, and what you'll do is you'll pull up, you'll kind of do a cross with your black and pull the red over, toss the stitch over, and then cross it back over. So you're going to be kind of weaving it back and forth, toss over, bring it up, wrap it around, toss over. Okay, and then you're going to bring it down in front, and I'm going to purl it. And this is weaving in the color as you go along so that you don't have a sitting strand. Alright, so now what you want to do, and by weaving it back and forth, you're not going to get it all twisted. So I'm to my purling section, so I'm going to be purling 4 as I'm weaving. Okay. So here's that. I'm weaving it in front, pulling that red yarn in front, and purling, weaving it back, pulling the red yarn in front, and purl, weaving it in front again, and you're going to E-wrap, then you're going to pull it back, E-wrap, cross back again, E-wrap, cross back again, and now you're back to purling, cross in front, and purl. Now this is basically the only time you're going to have to do that kind of technique. But that way you don't have a black strand just kind of floating around in here. It's actually worked in. Okay. So now what we want to do is we want to go in and we want to knit all the way from here to here. Gonna knit here and stop. Okay. Now we want to work our way back. Because we started with a purl, we're keeping up with a garter stitch, so what we're going to start with is a knit. So we're going to knit 3, purl 1, then we're going to E-wrap, then we're going to purl 1. Okay, at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to knit all the way around to here. Okay, this is our stopping point, because then we're going to pick up on the stitch patternings right here. Alright. Okay, we've knitted our way around, which is the back half of our dress. And what we want to do now is, because this is our first row, remember we started with a purl over here. So we're going to purl, actually we're doing the first 4 here because we've marked that out. So we're going to do knit 4. Okay. Now we're going to do our section where cabling is. So we're going to purl, because we did purling the first time over here. Okay, we purled 4. We're going to E-wrap 3. And then we're going to end up purling 4. Okay, we're at our connecting point, and you need to decide which color is consistently going to go under and over. Alright, because here's where our connecting point is, and it's always the same. Okay, so for me, I usually like to go the black, the darker color always goes under and over to start working back. And whatever you choose to cross over and under is where you're going to start working back. So I'm going to be working back with my black. I'm going to knit my way over here. Okay, we've worked our way over. Now, I just wanted to keep you in mind, once you've knitted here and around, and then you've picked up your red and you've knitted all the way around, this counts as 1 row. So right now we've just started on the 2nd row. So this is the start of the 2nd row, and then when I come back all the way around, that'll complete the 2nd row. So every time you cross is a row. Alright, so every time you cross your colors, take your your row counter and click a row. Usually what I'll do is I'll do 2 crosses and then I'll click off 2 rows. Okay, so now I'm going to work my way back, in which I know I want to knit 3, purl 1, E-wrap 3. We'll be doing our first cross when we get to the other side. Okay, and then we're going to purl 1 and then knit 3. And then you're just going to knit all the way around to your stitch marker here, and then we will do this section to finish up the row 2. Okay, we've reached our section here where we need to work up our first cable cross. So what we want to do is we want to purl our 4, because that's where we're at, because we're doing a garter stitch on the end stitches where your shoulder straps will be. So purl 4. Okay, here's our 3 stitches. I'm going to actually E-wrap this stitch here and leave it be. Okay. Then I'm going to skip this first one, E-wrap, toss the bottom loop over, lift it up and hold it. Okay. Then what I'll do is go in and E-wrap this stitch here, toss the bottom loop over, move stitch 2 to peg 3, and stitch 3 to peg 2. And then what I like to do is snug things up, and then purl 4. Okay, now I'm going to pull this out and show you what you have when I show you the cross. Okay, so as you can see, you want to take the black, cross up under and over, and then what you'll see is there's no real twist here, and there's a reason for that. Alright, now we're going to work our black and knit our way over. Now we want to pick up our red, and because we've purled, this time we're going to do our knit 3. Okay. So we knit 3, purl 1, and then we're going to E-wrap 3. Then you're going to purl 1, knit 3. Okay, now you're going to knit all the way back over to this stitch marker over here. Okay, we've worked our way back over to here. Now we're going to purl 4. We're going to E-wrap our first peg. We're going to skip that one, that second peg, E-wrap the third, pull that stitch off, E-wrap the second peg, move the second stitch over to the third peg and place the third stitch onto the second peg and snug up your stitches. Purl 4. This completes row 3. Okay, remember the rule. Black crosses under the red and over, so that only half the time is it actually twisted. The other half it's not. Alright, so then go ahead and knit your way back over. Remember, every time you twist it counts as a row, so we've just finished row 3. We're working on row 4 right now. Okay, now we're going to come back over here and pick up our red. Remember we purled, so now we're going to knit 3. I'm going to purl 1. Going to E-wrap 3. Purl 1. And then knit 3. Okay, then you're going to knit all the way around to the first stitch marker here, and then I'll show you how to do the other half of the cabling over here. Then we'll work our way and show you how to do the other half of the cabling over here. So go ahead and knit your way around, and then I'll show you how to complete this section over here. Now we're back around here. What we want to do is we want to purl our 4, and we're going to work the other half. So what we're going to do is skip behind that first peg, we're going to E-wrap that second peg. Okay, we're going to pick that stitch up, E-wrap the first peg, move stitch 1 to peg 2, and stitch 2 to peg 1, snug up, and then E-wrap that third peg. The looser you E-wrap, the easier this is going to be, okay? Now you're going to purl. Okay, remember the black crosses under the red and over. And this is a row. Remember that. Okay. Now you're going to knit your way over. Now I'm going to be showing you the last row of a set, and what you want to do is you're going to repeat when I started doing the cabling section over here all the way to this row here, and I believe that's about a 4-row set, because between each cable you have a regular row. Okay, so it's a 4-row set. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to come back, and what that means is you should have where you just E-wrap the 3 stitches in between doing the cable. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to knit 3, so we're working our way back, purl 1, and then you want to E-wrap 3, purl 1, knit 3, okay, now knit all the way over to your stitch marker over here, and I'll show you how to do the rest of the row. We're around here to other side, and we're going to purl 4, skip that first E-wrap, E-wrap the second peg, take that stitch off and hold it, E-wrap the first peg, move the first stitch to peg 2 and stitch 2 to peg 1, and snug up your stitches and E-wrap peg. And remember, you cross under and over and work your way back. Okay, now you want to knit 3, purl 1, E-wrap 3, purl 1, knit 3. Okay, at this point you're going to knit all the way around, and then you're going to start when I first start showing you how to do the cabling, and you're going to repeat these rows over and over and over again until you have a total of 50 rows. or 49 rows, depending on if you want to do 4 or 5 rows of a seed stitch in the black area. Okay, so pause the video, get your rows done for the bulk of your bodice area, and then we'll move on from there. I've gotten my rows done. And there you can see the cable work. And now it's time to start working the edging that you're supposed to have so that you can bind off. Okay, so we're going to do 5 rows. Remember, under and over. And I'm going to do a rib stitch like I did down here, right here. So I'm going to knit 2 and purl 2. Okay, we finished with a knit 2. Remember, we'll start with a knit 2. Okay, this section is going to be very close to the same, except these 8 stitches here, we're going to be doing a seed stitch on both sides, okay, because they're going to get binded off to do the back section. Okay, so you're going to start the 11 peg section like normal. By knitting 3. Purling 1. E-wrap 3. Purl 1, knit 3, okay. Now we want to do the next 8 pegs, so these and these, and we're going to do a seed stitch. I'm going to start off with a knit purl. So we're going to knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, and your last one will be purl. Next thing you're going to do is knit all the way around to just before the 8 pegs over here. Okay, so that we can do this section here. And again, you'll continue the patterning that you've been doing through here, but you'll just be alternating on your seed stitch here and doing a rib stitch here. Okay, so I'll show you 2 rows, but remember to keep up with what patterning you're doing here. So go ahead and knit your way around. Okay, we've reached our 8 before, and you may want to actually mark it, and because you have this here, you can probably go ahead and take it off. If you have limited stitch markers, and go ahead and put it over here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You can put it right here. It's a little easier to see over here than it is here. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with a knit and purl all the way around to those 8 pegs. Okay. Now we're doing this side, so purl 4. So we're working the next 11 pegs. Okay. If you ever have to lay the garment down and pick it back up and you need to know which cable you did first, you'll see your last little notch or cluster is right in here, which means you need to cross the first half. Okay? Alright. So skip that first peg, E-wrap the second. Pick it up, E-wrap the first peg, toss it over, pick up the stitch 1, place it on peg 2, place stitch 2 on peg 1, and snug up your stitches. And you don't want to snug them up too much so that you can move them the next time. And E-wrap that stitch. Okay, then purl 4, and that'll complete a row, adding a seed stitch and a rib stitch. Everything else is working the same through here. Okay, that completes a row. We're now ready to start our second row, adding these stitch patternings to it. This stays a little smoother when it's in your lap and not working on a desk, so you know. Alright, here we go. Under and over, as we've been doing. Okay, now we want to knit 2 and purl 2 across to continue our rib stitch on the black area. Knit 2, purl 2. Okay, now come back over here. Pick back up your red. Knit 3, purl 1, and E-wrap 3, purl 1, and knit 3. So that it stays the same as starting it over here, we're going to start with a knit because we finished with a purl. So we're going to go knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, and purl. Okay. At this point, we're going to knit our way around. Okay, we're to our pit area. Remember, we finished with a purl. Now we're going to start with a knit. So we're going to knit, purl. We're doing a seed stitch for our armpit area. Okay, and we're doing this area like we've been doing, keeping up with it. So we know we're going to purl 4. You want to know what you did last. There's a notch towards the front, so we need to crisscross the second 2. Okay. So we're going to E-wrap that first peg. Skip the second, E-wrap the third. Always try to do your E-wraps as least as possible. Take that stitch off. E-wrap peg 2. Place stitch 2 onto peg 3 and stitch 3 onto peg 2. And snug up your stitches. Then you're going to purl 4, and that completes your second row. Now I'm going to leave you to do your border, which is like 4 or 5 rows, depending on how you want to do this. I'm probably going to do 5 rows. Okay. And what that means is that'll end me up over here. Alright. Okay. So keep doing the rib stitching through the black chest area, the seed stitching through the pit area, and keep up with what you had going on in your cabling area as you would have if you weren't doing a little extra stitch work here. Okay, so pause the video, get your border edge done so that we can bind off and start finishing up the back and the shoulder strap. Okay, I've got my edging done and I finished over here. Now what I need to do now is get all my sections bounded off and where I have 2 shoulder straps to work and the back half of the dress to work. So here's what you want to do. So that it gets connected here at this connecting point, you send the black up under and over. And then what we're going to do is we're going to bind off the black. Okay, so you're going to knit pegs 1 and 2. Move that second stitch back to peg 1. Toss the bottom loop over and move it over. And we're going to do a regular bind off. So we're just going to toss the bottom loop over. And don't do it tight. You want to do this fairly loose. Okay, so pause the video and get the black binded off, and then we'll come back around and work the back half to get that separated. Okay, so go ahead and bind off the black area, which is your 26 pegs. I'll show you how to finish up here, and we'll go in and do the back half. Okay, I've got my last one. I'm going to snip for a tail and pull through. And pull that through. And there you have a rib stitch. Okay, now we need to pick up and move towards the other side, and you want to pull back on that so that it stays nice and connected. And you're going to knit 3, purl 1, E-wrap 3, purl 1, knit 3. Now we're going to bind off. So we're going to knit the next 2 pegs. Then we're going to take that first stitch back to, second stitch back to the first peg. Toss the bottom loop over and move it over one. Knit the second stitch. Toss, take that back. Toss the bottom loop over, move it over one. One more. Take that, move it back one. Toss the bottom loop over. And we'll do one more. Take it back. Toss the bottom loop over and move it over. That counts as a stitch there. And then you want to purl the next stitch because you're going to keep up with that seed stitch. Knit and purl. And the reason why we didn't bind these off is we need a nice smooth edge for the back. Alright, now we're going to knit our way around, and we're going to be binding off these stitches here. So go ahead and knit your way around, do your seed stitch with the last 4, and then we'll bind off the next 4. Okay? Okay, we're to the last 4. We're going to knit that first one, purl the next one, knit the next one, and purl the last one. Okay, next we want to bind off the next 4. So you're going to knit first peg, second peg, move that second stitch back to the first peg, toss the bottom loop over, move over, knit the next, move it back one, toss the bottom loop over, move it over one, and bind off all 4. And with this one, because you know you're fixing to be purling those, go ahead and purl this first stitch. Move it back one, hit the bottom loop over, and move it over. Then knit 3. Purl 3, excuse me. Okay, then we need to see, we're going to do the back 2. So we're going to E-wrap that first one. Then we're going to cross skip that second one, E-wrap the third peg, take it off, hold it, E-wrap the second, toss that loop over, move stitch 2 to peg 3, and stitch 3 to peg 2, and purl your 4. Now what I would suggest is when you get to the last one, you knit, and you want to create a chain, so in case you wanted to add a collar or something, that helps. Alright, so knit that. Okay, now to make sure that you don't have a hole that develops, I would suggest going in and bringing these two together. Okay, so you'll want to knot them. Alright, and that connects that. Alright, so now what we're to is just working these 11 pegs for 36 rows. Okay, and that's about 3 inches. Alright, so you should now have this shoulder strap, and then the back half of the dress. Okay, now what you're going to do is, remembering what you were working, well, you'll knit your way back, and we're going to be slipping that first stitch from now on. Okay, so we're going to slip that first stitch, and we're going to knit 2. And then purl 1, E-wrap 3, purl 1, knit 3. Okay, we're going to work our way back. We're going to slip that first stitch, purl 3, skip that first peg, E-wrap the second, take that stitch off, E-wrap first peg, move it over to the second peg, and put the second stitch on the first peg. E-wrap the third peg, and then purl 3 and knit the last stitch. And then knit. Okay. I'll show you 2 more rows. So you're going to slip that first stitch and knit 2. And purl 1. And E-wrap 3, purl 1, knit 3. And then working our way back, you're going to slip that first peg, purl 3, E-wrap that first peg, skip, E-wrap the third peg, toss the bottom loop over, pick it up, E-wrap peg 2, toss the bottom loop over, move stitch 2 to peg 3, and stitch 3 to peg 2. Purl 3 and knit that last stitch. And there's 3 and knit. Now, because there's 2 on this peg, and if you don't want to constantly have to change the angle, what you can do, after you do a couple of rows, you can take the stitches off those pegs, and you can move it down, and you can add the stitches back over here. And that way you don't have to constantly twist and curve around the corner. You can flatten it out. Okay, so pause the video and complete a total of 36 rows. It shouldn't take you long. And then we'll move over and do the other shoulder strap real quick. And then we will do the back. Okay, so 36 rows total. And then we'll do 36 rows here. Over here on the shoulder strap, and then move to the back. Okay, I've done my rows, as you can see. And I am ready to go in and bind off. So I'm going to knit that second peg. Take it back 1. Do just a regular bind off. Do nothing special, but I always suggest don't always go super tight with your bind off. So go ahead and bind off your shoulder strap, and then we'll move on to the next section. Pause the video, get that much done, and then we'll move on to over here. Okay, we're ready to do our other half. And so that we continue with the patterning that we were going from over here, so it doesn't get too confusing, we're going to start on the right side, because that's how we've been working the pattern, and that way it's not too difficult to pick up the pattern and keep going with it like you were doing previously when you were working back and forth. So we're going to be continuing with the same patterning, okay? So what you want to do is you want to make a slip knot, and then you want to just knit that first stitch over, okay? And then you're going to purl 3. And this will continue with the same patterning that you had been doing prior, so that it doesn't get confusing for you. So we're going to ear-wrap that first stitch, go to the third stitch, ear-wrap it, take that off, ear-wrap the second stitch, move the second stitch to peg 3, and stitch 3 to peg 2, and then purl 3 and knit that last one, okay? Okay, knit the last one. Alright, now the reason why you are doing that method is if you look at here, you have a nice chain. So if you ever wanted to add sleeves, you could, and you have a chain you can work with to add to back to the loom. Alright, and then you have a chain if you wanted to do a neckline all the way through. Okay, so that's the reason why I suggested to do a knit the last stitch, slip the first stitch of each row, and that gives you that nice chain patterning, okay? So we're doing this styling over here is what we're doing, so that hopefully makes a lot more sense. Alright, so then you'll slip that first stitch, and then you'll knit 2, purl 1, ear-wrap 3, purl 1, knit 3. Okay. Again, if you should be used to the patterning that's going on over here, because we're just going the same direction we were going when we were originally starting this. Okay, so this is going to be row 3, and again, you'll do a total of 36 rows. You purl those 3, and then you're going to do a cable crossing. So you're going to E-wrap peg 2 after skipping peg 1. Lift that stitch up, E-wrap peg 1, move stitch 1 to peg 2, and snug up your stitches. Not too snug, just where they're nicely on the loom, and then E-wrap peg 3. Purl 3 and knit the last one. You're going to repeat what we just did for the last 4 rows over and over again until you have a total of 36 rows. And knit the last one. And then slip the first stitch, knit 2, purl 1, E-wrap 3, purl 1, and knit 3. So pause the video, complete this strap, bind off just like we did over here. Go ahead and bind off, and then when we come back, we're going to start on this side and work our way back and forth. We're going to start always on the side as if we were working the way we were, and that way it'll be easier to keep up with, okay? So go ahead, pause the video, and get your rows done, bind off, and then you should have 2 really nice front shoulder straps, okay? And then we'll be working on the back of the dress, okay? Okay, we have completed the front of the dress. There is 1 and 2. And as you can see, there's the front of your dress. Now, we need to start work on the back half of the dress. Okay. Alright, what you want to do is you want to get you a slip knot. Go in and tighten that up. And then you want to knit that over. Now, keep in mind, we're always going to knit the last stitch, slip the first stitch, okay? Now, we've knitted that one, and we're going to purl, knit, purl, knit our way around to these 4 over here, and then we will go there. This loom's a lot easier to use in the lap, so it's a little more difficult to film. Okay, and then what you want to do is you want to do a knit, purl, knit, and then knit that last stitch. Okay, going back the other direction, I'll show you, and then you're going to repeat these last 2 rows, total of 26 times. In the last 4 rows you're going to do a seed stitch, then you're going to bind off. Okay, so you're going to slip that first stitch, purl that next stitch, knit, purl, then you're going to knit your way around. Excuse me, you're going to do this for, let me change that up. You're going to do this for 32 rows. Then you're going to do 4 rows. That's for the smaller size, to do the 26. So okay, then we know we need to knit, purl, knit, knit. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and complete your rows. That'll either be 32 for this sizing, which is going to be a 4T. So you'll do 32, and if you're doing the smaller sizing, which is the 24, actually you'll be doing the you'll be doing 26. We're now to the last 4 rows, and we're going to do a seed stitch, as you can see. There's the back, and there's your side. Okay. Alright, so the lucky thing is the way we've done it, it should add up right on this side. Okay. So what you want to do is you want to slip that first stitch, and you want to purl knit all the way around. Okay, and because of the way we set it up on the other side, it does not affect the other side the way that we did this. So what you want to do is you want to purl knit your way over, and you're going to knit the last 2 pegs over here. Okay, so pause the video and purl knit all the way around, and then I'll show you how to start. It's basically going to be starting the same thing over again over here, but I'll show you the last 2 pegs over here and how to begin over here. Okay, I'm down to my last 2 pegs, and I've purled this last one here, and I'm just going to knit both these pegs. Alright, now I'm going to start off the same way that I did over here. I'm going to slip that first stitch and purl knit my way around. So purl knit all the way around, and this is a 4 rows seed stitch. Okay, and you want to complete 4 rows. This would be row 2 for you, and you'll complete 2 more rows exactly the same, and then we'll be ready to bind off. So pause the video, complete your 4 rows of seed stitch, and then we'll be ready to bind off. Okay, we finished our rows, and now it is time to bind off. And how we're going to do this is slip that first stitch, knit the second stitch, move it back 1, toss the bottom loop over, move over 1, knit the second stitch, take it back 1, toss the bottom loop over, move it over 1. Okay, so bind off, and then we'll be ready to sew up what little we need to sew up on the bodice. Okay, Now that we've binded off our edge, I went ahead and strung a needle, which I like to call me a longer tail. And at this point, we're going to do a chain sewing seam, where we do the chains from the bind off on both sides and connect them. So I'm actually going to tie my ends together and make it a little easier to do. What we want to do is, there is your sleeve opening, or your armhole opening, and you want to make sure that they get lined up, okay? So nothing's twisted or anything like that. Alright, so what we want to do is we want to find our first chain, which is right here, and then we want to find our chain over here, which is right here, and we are going to send it through. Okay, we're going to find our next chain, which is right here, and then we're going to find our next chain over here, pull through, and you just continue the process of finding the next chain on one side and the next chain on the other side, and sew them together. Snug up the seam and pull it. Okay. You're going to do this all the way across, and you're going to do this on both sides. Now I cut a longer chain on the, I cut a tail that's fairly long on the other side. So you should be able to just thread the needle and sew it up. That's why I always leave long tails. That way you have one less thing to give you a knot or an attachment on. Just makes it cleaner. Okay. Almost there. Pull and pull out like that. Alright. I think I have at least one more chain to do, which should connect my edging. Okay, I'll send it through another chain. Alrighty. So as you can see, there's your connector. You're going to do the same thing on the other side. Knot that off. And then you're going to weave in the ends, okay? Alright. So there's your armhole. Now you want to do the same thing on this side. And I'm just would thread this because I cut me a long tail and sew it that way. Make sure you don't have any crisscross areas, okay? But there is your dress bodice right there. Okay, and that is how you do a dress bodice with a square neckline. That's just one option. There are other options for necklines, but this is a square neckline.